Mother's Day is not a gratitude holiday. She's still your mother. You've heard this, right? Maybe you've heard it 100 times. Maybe you've heard it so many times that the sentence doesn't mean anything anymore. It's become a reflex, a conversation stopper, a moral cudgel disguised as an observation. But what if I told you something different? What if I told you that for millions of adults, Mother's Day is not a gratitude holiday? What if it's actually a pressure ritual, an annual loyalty test dressed up in carnations and Hallmark cards, where your nervous system is screaming one thing and everyone around you is telling you to perform another? That's what we're doing today. We're naming it. We're not diagnosing your mother from a distance. We're not telling you what to do about her. What we're doing is calling the pattern clearly, so that you, someone who lives with the aftermath of coercion, manipulation, guilt, and image management, can actually see what's happening and prepare for it. Because here's the thing that nobody says out loud. For many survivors of emotionally abusive, narcissistic, or deeply manipulative family systems, Mother's Day can feel like an ambush. And your dread is not a character flaw. It's a nervous system response to a very real pattern. Naming the hidden pain. Let's be honest. When Mother's Day is coming, something shifts. Maybe it starts in April. Maybe it starts with a text you weren't expecting. Maybe it starts with you scrolling and seeing those early ads. The jewelry, the spa packages, the family brunch photos from strangers' lives that somehow make you feel guilty for existing. And if you've spent any amount of time in a family system built on coercion and control, you know that feeling. That particular tightness in your chest. That specific kind of dread that isn't about one thing, it's about 100 things at once. The calendar notification goes off. Mother's Day is 2 weeks away, and suddenly you're not thinking about what you want to do or how you actually feel. You're thinking about logistics. You're thinking about duty. You're thinking about what happens if you don't perform this ritual correctly. This is what we need to talk about. Not because your feelings are dramatic, but because they're rational. Your nervous system is responding to a genuine pattern. A day that looks like it's about honoring mothers, but often functions as a pressure ritual that demands perform gratitude, perform access, perform forgiveness you don't feel, perform family loyalty even when that family has harmed you, perform joy at a holiday that reminds you of what you didn't get, protect her image in public while she protected her own interests in private, suppress your actual memory in service of a comfortable story. Ignore your body's warning signals because the alternative, the guilt, is too heavy to carry. The thing they don't tell you is that for many survivors, Mother's Day is the day when all of those demands converge. Why Mother's Day feels like a pressure ritual. Let's back up and understand something foundational. In a healthy family system, Mother's Day is supposed to be genuinely optional. You show up if you want to, you express appreciation if you feel it, and your choice is respected either way. But in a family system built on obligation, control, and image management, Mother's Day becomes something entirely different. It becomes a test. It becomes a test of your loyalty. It becomes a test of your access. It becomes a test of whether you've successfully internalized her narrative about what happened between you. And the stakes feel impossibly high, because they always do in families like this. Here's what's happening. Mother's Day in a manipulative family system is not about the holiday itself. It's about what the holiday demands of you. It's about what you have to do, what you have to say, what you have to feel, and most importantly, what you have to keep silent about in order to preserve the day's image. The pressure starts with something that sounds like tradition, but actually works like obligation. It's what families do, someone says. A sibling, your father, an aunt who doesn't know what happened behind closed doors and wouldn't want to know. Family always comes together for Mother's Day. This sentence is doing multiple things at once. It's framing participation as inevitable. It's framing your boundaries as selfish. It's framing your grief or anger as something that needs to be overcome, not respected. And then the actual mechanics kick in. The pressure increases. You start getting messages that seem innocent on the surface, but carry significant weight underneath. What are you doing for Mom? This is the opening question, the one that makes you have to decide, right then, whether you're complying or resisting. And if you're resisting, you're suddenly the ungrateful one. The text might come from your mother directly. It might come at the perfect moment when you're already exhausted, already triggered by something else, already vulnerable. Just want to see what you're thinking for Mother's Day. This sounds casual, but what it actually is a setup. Because no matter what you say, she's already decided the story. If you plan something small, quiet, and low contact, she'll text back, "I guess I'm just the worst mother." This is the reversal. This is the emotional blackmail that flip-flops the conversation so fast that suddenly you're not planning a holiday anymore. You're defending yourself. Or she might not respond to your plan at all. She might wait until Mother's Day is 3 days away and then send something that feels like a gut punch. A photo from years ago when things seemed normal. A message about a memory you have a very different emotional attachment to. A comment about how family is the most important thing and how much she misses you. Or not misses you exactly. Misses what she perceives as her relationship with you, the one where you did what she wanted and didn't ask questions. This is a behavior called hoovering. It's what happens when an abuser wants to pull you back in. Usually when they sense you're distant, or when a socially sanctioned moment like a holiday creates an opportunity. Mother's Day is one of the highest hoovering moments of the year, because the holiday itself carries the message that family reconciliation is not just acceptable, it's morally required. And here's the thing that makes it specifically cruel. Mother's Day hoovering works by using the language of the holiday itself. It doesn't say, "I miss having control over you." It says, "I miss my daughter," or "Your mom has had a hard year," or "She would really love to hear from you." Suddenly, your boundary, which was protecting you, is being reframed as cruelty to her. The pressure intensifies if you have siblings, because they become what are sometimes called flying monkeys, not through malice necessarily, but through their own confusion, their own trauma bonding, their own need to keep the family's image intact. A sibling texts, "Are you coming to Mom's brunch?" She's been talking about it. This message does several things. It says that Mom has already decided what's happening. It says that your attendance is expected. It says that if you don't show up, you're letting her down. And it says, most importantly, that you're now on notice. Everyone will know if you don't comply. These siblings are often not evil. They're often just the people who adapted to the family system differently than you did. Maybe they became the golden child. Maybe they never questioned anything. Maybe they benefit from keeping Mom happy, and your boundaries threaten that. Or maybe they're traumatized too and don't recognize it. So your refusal to participate looks like you're choosing drama instead of choosing healing. The family image machine revs into high gear. Social media becomes a stage. Your mother posts about what a wonderful Mother's Day she had, about her 3 beautiful children, and how grateful she is, complete with photos from an event you didn't attend. And then people comment, What a beautiful family. You're so blessed. And there's this deeply false narrative being performed for an audience. The image is being managed. The reality is being hidden. And you're supposed to witness it and say nothing. Or worse, you're supposed to participate in it. You're supposed to tag her. You're supposed to like the photo. You're supposed to publicly perform the gratitude narrative, the loyalty narrative, the I have a great mom narrative. And every time you do, you're reinforcing the image while betraying yourself. This is where the pressure becomes almost unbearable, because you're not just managing a relationship with your mother. You're managing her public image. You're a supporting actor in her life story. And on Mother's Day, that role becomes mandatory in a way that's difficult to articulate to someone who didn't grow up in this kind of system. The pressure extends to the extended family. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, people who have no idea what happened, who only know the performance. And they suddenly become enforcers of the obligation. You miss a Mother's Day gathering, and suddenly your grandmother is calling, confused and disappointed. I don't understand why you're being like this, she says, and you can't explain it without sounding ungrateful or exposing something that the family has collectively agreed not to see. There's another layer to this pressure that's specific to Mother's Day, and specific to mothers in particular, because there's a cultural narrative that says motherhood is sacred, that mothers are automatically worthy of honor. That criticism of a mother is basically a betrayal of nature itself. And this narrative works as a protective shield for mothers who have harmed their children, because it makes it nearly impossible to say out loud what's actually true, that you had a mother who hurt you. That gratitude isn't what you feel, that you're not being ungrateful, you're being honest. And every year, the holiday cycles around. Every year, the pressure regenerates. Every year, your nervous system has to anticipate the test. Is this the year she'll surprise you? Is this the year she'll respect your boundaries? Is this the year you'll finally be able to just move on and participate normally? Is this the year the guilt will finally lift? It doesn't, usually, because the pressure isn't about you doing something wrong. The pressure is structural. It's built into what Mother's Day means in a family system where love was always conditional and access was always a tool of control. How manipulative family systems weaponize holidays. Now, let's talk about something bigger. Mother's Day doesn't exist in isolation. It's one moment in a yearly calendar that's been weaponized. And understanding how holidays function in manipulative family systems is crucial to understanding why you feel what you feel on these specific days. In a healthy family, holidays are rhythms. They're optional touchstones. They're times when people choose to gather, and the absence of someone doesn't carry the weight of betrayal. But in a family system built on coercion and control, holidays become something else. They become moments when the family expects you to prove something. They become moments when the normal rules don't apply. They become moments when someone else's feelings override yours, and there's a cultural permission to make that happen. Think about this pattern. You have a birthday. If you're in a manipulative family system, your birthday might be about you. Or it might be about managing your mother's expectations, her need to be appreciated for having you, her hurt if you plan something without her input, her disappointment if you don't perform gratitude at the level she requires. Birthdays in these families are often more about the parent than the person celebrating. Christmas is another moment. Thanksgiving, Father's Day, though typically with less intensity than Mother's Day. New Year's, and Mother's Day. Mother's Day specifically, because it has this narrative power that other holidays don't have. It has this moral weight. The message is built in. If you love her, you prove it today. Here's how this weaponization works at a tactical level. In the weeks before Mother's Day, the pressure starts building. The holiday hasn't even arrived, and it's already controlling your emotional state. You're already in a defensive position. You're already managing expectations that you didn't set. You're already trying to figure out what will hurt the least, participating and feeling sick, or declining and feeling guilty. Then the day arrives, and the emotional dynamics of childhood can suddenly flood back. If you're visiting, you're in the physical space where the worst things happened. Everything, the smell, the light through the windows, the layout of the rooms, the sound of certain phrases becomes a trigger. Your nervous system remembers. If you're not visiting, if you're maintaining distance, then the text messages start. The calls that go unanswered. The guilt texts from siblings. You should call Mom. The passive-aggressive messages. I guess Mom will just have to understand why she didn't hear from you. The emotional blackmail of someone saying, "This is the last Mother's Day Mom might have," as if you knowing about her mortality should override your need for safety. And here's where the system becomes especially cruel. In a manipulative family, the holidays are when people try to reset the narrative. They're when people expect you to act as if the abuse didn't happen, or didn't matter, or has been sufficiently apologized for with a guilty text and a pause in the manipulation for 2 weeks. It's like there's a temporary agreement that everyone will pretend together. Everyone will be the family we're supposed to be. Everyone will perform the roles we're assigned to. And the violence, the emotional violence, the psychological control, the manipulation gets put in a box and hidden away for the duration of the holiday. Then everyone goes back to their lives, and the box gets opened again. Except here's the thing. You can't actually do this. You can't move in and out of dissociation that cleanly. Your body remembers what happened. Your nervous system doesn't reset just because it's a holiday. And the cognitive dissonance of having to pretend, to perform, to be kind to someone who hasn't changed and hasn't genuinely taken responsibility, that dissonance accumulates. It doesn't heal. It hardens. In some family systems, the hoovering is deliberate and sophisticated. The mother might have genuinely reflected on her behavior and wants to make amends. Some do. Some actually change. If that's your situation, that's genuinely something different. But in many cases, the hoovering is a tactic. It's a test of the boundary. It's a way of checking whether you've been worn down enough to come back. It's a way of reasserting that the relationship is what she says it is, that the narrative is what she controls it to be. The flying monkeys amplify this. Siblings might text with messages like, "Mom's been sad lately. I think she really wants to reconnect with you," which sounds concerned and loving but actually translates to, "Your distance is making her sad, and that is a problem that you need to fix." These messages carry the family's expectation that you are responsible for her emotional well-being. They carry the family's belief that your refusal to be harmed is actually cruelty to her. And there's another dimension to this. In some family systems, the holidays are when someone's role is most rigid. Maybe you grew up as the peacekeeper, the person who kept the peace by absorbing the anger, by being small, by managing everyone's emotions. Mother's Day might activate that role again. Suddenly, you're not an adult. You're the person who has to make sure everyone's comfortable. You're the person who has to manage your mother's feelings. You're the person who has to be responsible for whether she has a good day. Or maybe you grew up as the scapegoat, the one who could be blamed for anything. Mother's Day might be the day when all the blame gets redistributed, when you're reminded of all the ways you've hurt her, failed her, disappointed her, when the holiday becomes an opportunity to re-establish you as the problem in the family system. Or maybe you were the parentified child, the one who took care of her emotionally before you were old enough to consent to that responsibility. Mother's Day might be when that role reasserts itself most powerfully, when you're expected to parent her, to make her feel good, to be the adult in the relationship. These roles are deep. They were formed when you didn't have language to resist them. They were rewarded when you complied and punished when you didn't. And a holiday like Mother's Day can reactivate them with terrifying speed. The system's power is that it makes you invisible. It makes your survival invisible. It makes your harm invisible. The focus is entirely on her experience, her feelings, her needs, her narrative, and you're supposed to be okay with that. You're supposed to center her. You're supposed to understand what survivors are actually grieving. There's something really important we need to distinguish here. When survivors talk about Mother's Day being hard, about dreading the holiday, about not wanting to participate, people often assume they're angry, or bitter, or ungrateful, or that they're refusing to participate because they haven't forgiven someone who hurt them. But that's not often what's actually happening. What's actually happening is much more complicated. What's actually happening is grief, the grief of what you didn't get. This is the thing that's almost impossible to explain to someone who didn't grow up in a manipulative family system. Because the mother who harmed you and the mother you needed are sometimes the same person, and sometimes two entirely different things. You might have needed a mother who could hold your emotions without making them about herself. And you had a mother who turned your pain into her drama. You might have needed a mother who could say, "I made a mistake. I hurt you. I'm sorry, and I want to understand what that was like for you." And you had a mother who said, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me." You might have needed a mother who said, "Your feelings matter, your boundaries matter, your safety matters." And you had a mother who said, "You're being dramatic," or "You're too sensitive," or "That didn't happen the way you remember it." You might have needed a mother who could admit wrongdoing. And you had a mother who could only manipulate you into accepting her version of events. You might have needed a mother who was safe. And you had a mother who was the danger. And here's the thing about Mother's Day that breaks people's hearts. The holiday itself is structured around grief. The holiday tells you that today you're supposed to celebrate her. Today you're supposed to express gratitude. Today you're supposed to be glad you have her. And that message is hitting you at the exact moment when what you're actually grieving is that you don't, and never did, have the mother you needed. Some survivors can separate these. They can feel grateful for the things she did give, a place to sleep, food, life itself, while also grieving the things she didn't. They can hold both truths at once. A mother can have been there, physically present, and also absent in the ways that mattered most. Both things can be true. But the pressure of Mother's Day doesn't allow for that complexity. The pressure demands that you choose. It says, either you appreciate her or you're ungrateful. Either you show up or you're cruel. Either you participate in the narrative or you're the problem. And what you're actually grieving, the mother you needed, doesn't fit into that binary. The grief is real. The absence is real. The loss is real. And no amount of therapy or forgiveness is going to change the fact that you never had what you should have had. This is where people get confused. They think if you're grieving the mother you needed, you should be more motivated to have a relationship with the mother you actually have. And that's not how human emotions work. Grieving what you didn't get doesn't mean you should accept crumbs from the person who didn't provide it. Grieving the absent good mother doesn't mean you should maintain contact with the present harmful one. Some survivors feel relief on Mother's Day. They feel relief because Mother's Day is a reminder of what they don't have to do anymore. They don't have to perform. They don't have to pretend. They don't have to participate in the family image machine. And that relief might sit next to guilt, or next to sadness, or next to anger. You can feel relief and grief and guilt all at the same time. Your emotions don't have to make sense to anyone else. Some survivors feel numb. They feel the expectations coming, and they just shut down. It's a protective response. Their nervous system knows that if they let themselves feel, the weight of it will be too much. So they go flat. They don't feel the relief, or the grief, or the anger. They just feel nothing. And then people ask them why they're being cold. They don't understand that numbness is often survival. Some survivors feel hypervigilant. They're waiting for the emotional ambush. They're anticipating the text that will hurt them. They're trying to prepare for every possible scenario. It's exhausting, but it's also rational. In a family system where emotions are weaponized, hypervigilance is not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. And some survivors feel all of this at once. What Mother's Day does is concentrate all of this grief into a single day and a single cultural expectation. It says, today you should be happy. Today you should be grateful. Today you should honor the person whose failure to protect you, to see you, to validate you, has shaped every relationship you have with yourself and with others. That's the grief. That's what's actually happening underneath the dread. The difference between guilt, obligation, grief, and love. Let's get very precise about something, because this is where a lot of survivors get stuck. There's guilt, and there's obligation, and there's grief, and there's love. They feel like the same thing sometimes, but they're not. And learning to tell the difference is one of the most important skills you can develop when you're recovering from a manipulative family system. Guilt is the feeling that you've done something wrong, that you've violated a rule, broken a promise, hurt someone. Guilt can be appropriate. It's a signal that you need to change your behavior. But guilt can also be manufactured. It can be socially implanted. It can be a tool of control. When your mother says, "After all I've done for you," she's trying to manufacture guilt. She's trying to make you feel like you owe her something, like you're in her debt, like your gratitude is insufficient, and your boundaries are punishment. But here's the thing. You don't actually owe her guilt. You didn't ask to be born. You didn't enter into a contract where she got to raise you without accountability and you got to feel forever grateful. Guilt in response to a parent's harm is almost always manufactured guilt. It's guilt that someone else installed in you so that they could maintain control. And sometimes that guilt is so deep that you can't tell it apart from love. Obligation is the feeling that you have to do something, that you don't have a choice. That participation is inevitable, and refusal is betrayal. Obligation is what makes you show up to Mother's Day when you don't want to be there. Obligation is what makes you send a card when you don't have anything nice to say. Obligation is the voice that says, you have to, regardless of what you actually need. But obligation is not the same as love. You can love someone and not feel obligated to hurt yourself for them. You can love someone and maintain distance. You can love someone and decline to participate in rituals that harm you. Obligation is often where the real problem lives, because obligation is what turns Mother's Day from an optional holiday into a coercive ritual. Obligation is what makes it a test instead of a celebration. Grief is the feeling of loss, the feeling that something important has been taken from you or was never there at all. Grief is accurate. Grief is honest. Grief doesn't demand anything from you. Grief just exists, and you have to exist alongside it. And love, actual love, is something entirely different. Love can exist alongside anger. Love can exist alongside the need for distance. Love can exist alongside the acknowledgement of harm. Love is not obligation. Love is not guilt. Love is not debt. In manipulative family systems, all of these get collapsed into one. They tell you, if you love her, you owe her guilt. If you love her, you owe her obligation. If you love her, you owe her access and contact and public performance and the suppression of your own reality. But that's not what love is. That's what control is. That's what coercion is. And the reason you feel so confused on Mother's Day is because you're being asked to fulfill all four: guilt, obligation, grief, and love at the same time for someone who may not have done any of these things for you. Let's talk about this very specifically. When your mother says, "I guess I'm just the worst mother," she's trying to manufacture obligation and guilt simultaneously. She's saying, "I've done something so bad that you should feel guilty, and you should feel obligated to make me feel better about it." The entire interaction becomes about managing her emotions instead of about you expressing gratitude or not. When someone says, "After all I've done for you," they're trying to convert care into debt. They're trying to say, "I gave you things, and that means you owe me. You owe me access. You owe me gratitude. You owe me a version of yourself that doesn't question what happened." But that's not how care works. When you truly give something to someone, you don't get to demand repayment for it years later. This is where the emotional blackmail of be the bigger person comes in. Someone tells you that you should forgive or overlook or move past what happened in the name of family unity or being mature. But being the bigger person in a manipulative family system usually means suppress your own reality, swallow your pain, perform the forgiveness narrative even though nothing has changed, and prioritize her comfort over your truth. And here's what's so insidious about this. It works. It works because you've been trained since childhood to prioritize her comfort. You've been trained to read her moods and adjust your behavior. You've been trained to manage her emotions. And that training doesn't switch off just because you turned 18. So when Mother's Day arrives, all of that training activates. Your nervous system goes, it's time to manage her emotions. It's time to prioritize her comfort. It's time to suppress what you actually feel and perform what you're supposed to feel. But here's what I need you to know. That guilt you feel is not evidence that you're wrong. That obligation you feel is not evidence that you should comply. The only thing your guilt and obligation are evidence of is that someone trained you very effectively to feel responsible for their emotional well-being. That's not love. That's parentification. That's a child being burdened with adult emotional labor. Protective strategies for the Mother's Day weekend. So what do you actually do about this? Not the big existential question of whether you should maintain contact with your mother. That's a complex decision that only you can make. But the practical question, how do you move through this weekend without drowning? There are several frameworks for managing contact with an emotionally abusive or manipulative parent. No contact, low contact, limited contact, strategic distance. And each of these is valid. Each of these is a choice, and each of these requires some deliberate planning, especially around a holiday. Let's start with no contact. No contact means no communication. No texts, no calls, no email, no social media stalking, no engagement at all. If that's your framework, Mother's Day requires a specific kind of preparation. The anticipatory anxiety is often worse than the actual day. Your nervous system is preparing for the ambush that you're not going to let happen. So you need to build a plan that makes you feel safe. That might mean tell a trusted friend that you're in a no-contact situation and you might need a text check-in on Mother's Day. It might mean silence your phone during certain hours so you're not checking obsessively to see if she's reached out. It might mean plan something for yourself that day that gives you purpose and presence. Go on a hike. Go to a movie. Spend time with people who actually love you. Do something that says, I'm not waiting for her. I'm not available for her. I'm present for my own life. If you have flying monkeys, siblings who contact you on her behalf, you can set a boundary in advance. You can send them a message like, Mother's Day will be hard for me this year. I need you to know that I won't be participating in any Mother's Day activities. I'd appreciate it if you could respect that and not relay messages. Some siblings will respect this. Some won't. If they don't, you have to decide whether to engage with the guilt trip or to protect your energy by muting them, blocking them, not responding. Silence is sometimes protective, not cruel. If you have access to a therapist or a support group, this is a good weekend to schedule something. Schedule a session or a call right before Mother's Day if you can. Have something to process with. Have someone in your corner. The processing doesn't have to prevent the pain, but it helps to not feel alone in it. Now, let's talk about low contact. Low contact means you maintain some communication with your mother, but it's limited. It's boundaried. It's controlled. Low contact requires a different strategy. You probably know that Mother's Day is coming. You're probably anticipating contact. So the protective thing to do is decide in advance what you're going to do. Are you going to send a card? Are you going to call? Are you going to visit? Decide this when you're not in emotional crisis. Decide this when you can think clearly. Then stick to the decision. If you're sending a card, you can make it boundaried. You don't have to write a heartfelt message. You can write something brief and kind that doesn't require you to perform gratitude you don't feel. Thinking of you on Mother's Day. That's complete. That's appropriate. You don't have to elaborate. If you're going to call, you can set a time limit. I can talk for 15 minutes. You can write down a few things you want to say so that you don't get derailed by her emotional responses. You can hang up when your time is up. You don't have to give a reason. I have another commitment is a complete answer. If you're going to visit, you can have an exit strategy. You can arrive late and leave early. You can stay in a hotel instead of in her home. You can bring something that grounds you, headphones, a book, a project. You can take breaks to go outside, to get away from the emotional density of the space. And here's something important. You don't have to be present for everything. If she's hosting a big Mother's Day gathering with other family members, you can choose not to attend that part. You can see her on a different day, or you can skip it entirely. You get to design the contact in a way that protects you. That's not ungrateful. That's not cruel. That's survival. One of the most protective things you can do on low contact is to practice gray rock. Gray rock is a technique where you're boring. You respond to her, but you don't give her information. You don't share emotion. You're like a gray rock, uninteresting, unresponsive to the attempt to get a reaction. If she says, "I miss you," you don't say, "I've been busy and I needed space." You say, "Yeah." If she tries to guilt you, "I haven't heard from you in weeks," you don't explain. You say, "I've had a lot going on." If she tries to get a rise out of you, you don't rise. You stay flat. This is not because you're being mean. It's because engagement gives her what she's looking for, access to your emotional state. And if you don't give her that, eventually she usually stops trying. Now let's talk about limited contact. Limited contact is when you see someone occasionally or regularly, but you have strict boundaries. You might have a relationship that's better than it was, or you might have decided that you want to try again with clear limits in place. Limited contact requires the most vigilance in some ways because it's the framework most likely to get blurred. You've reopened contact. You're trying again. Maybe she's trying to change. And then Mother's Day arrives, and suddenly you're vulnerable again because you want to believe that this time it might be different. It probably won't be, and that's okay. You can hope for better while protecting yourself for worse. If you're in limited contact, you can prepare by identifying your boundaries in advance. What would cross the line for you? Is it criticism of your appearance, your life choices, your partner? Is it asking invasive questions about your finances or your personal life? Is it comments about your family or your children? Identify what you absolutely will not tolerate and decide in advance how you'll respond to it. You might say, "I'm not going to discuss that," and then you change the subject, or you leave the conversation. You don't argue. You don't explain. You just refuse to engage with that topic. You might have a safety plan for escalation. If she becomes emotionally aggressive, you leave. You can say, "I don't think this is a good time to talk," and you can go. You're allowed to protect yourself from her emotional intensity. You might build in support. Is there someone you can text with during the visit? Someone you can call afterward? Someone who can help you process what happened? Build that in before you need it. And here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Silence, muting, blocking, and delayed responses can all be protective strategies. They're not cruel. They're not cold. They're survival. If your mother sends a guilt text on Mother's Day, you don't have to respond immediately. You can wait. You can sit with it. You can decide if you even want to respond. And if you don't want to, that's okay. Your lack of response is a boundary. It's not cruelty. If she's posting on social media trying to get your attention, you can mute her. You don't have to see it. You don't have to respond to it. You don't have to participate in the performance. If she's crossing lines in text conversations, you can block her. Temporarily or permanently. It depends on what you need. These are protective strategies. They're not betrayals. They're not evidence that you're a bad person. They're evidence that you're choosing yourself. And that's what healing looks like. Now, across all of these frameworks, There are some universal things you can do to protect yourself this weekend. First, disconnect from the narrative. The cultural narrative says that Mother's Day is a day of gratitude, but you don't have to participate in that narrative. You can see it as a day like any other day. You can give yourself permission to feel whatever you feel, nothing, everything, or something in between. Your feelings are not wrong. Your dread is not ingratitude. Your inability to participate is not cruelty. Second, build in something that's just for you. Something that centers your own healing, your own survival, your own well-being. Go to a session with a therapist. Write in a journal. Spend time with people who actually see you and love you. Go outside. Do something that reminds you that you exist beyond your role in your family's story. Third, grieve if you need to. Mother's Day is a day that can bring grief up, and that's okay. Let it be there. Let yourself feel what you feel. The grief of what you didn't get. The grief of the mother you needed. The grief of the childhood that wasn't safe. These are all real griefs. They deserve space. Fourth, remember that this is temporary. This weekend will pass. Mother's Day will be over. You will survive it. You have survived every Mother's Day before this one. You will survive this one. And then there will be ordinary days again, where you don't have to think about this, where you can just live your life. And fifth, you can change your mind. If you decided no contact and you want to reach out, you can. If you decided to visit and you need to cancel, you can. If you decided to send something and you change your mind, that's okay. Your survival and your well-being matter more than being consistent, more than being predictable, more than managing her expectations. You get to do what you need to do. Closing, the dignified ending. Here's what I want you to know as this weekend approaches, and this is important, so I want you to actually hear it. Your dread is not a character flaw. It's evidence that you survived something hard. It's evidence that your nervous system learned to protect you. It's evidence that you're paying attention to your own boundaries, your own safety, your own well-being. That's not weakness. That's survival intelligence. The guilt you feel is not evidence that you're wrong. It's evidence that someone who was supposed to keep you safe, trained you to feel responsible for their emotional well-being. That training was deep. It was early. It was rewarded when you complied and punished when you didn't. That's not your fault. And you get to undo it. You get to decide whose emotions you're responsible for. And the answer is, you're responsible for yours. The confusion you feel about whether you should participate, whether you should reach out, whether you should give her another chance, that confusion is normal, because you're holding two truths at the same time. You can want a mother and not want contact with the mother you have. You can grieve the relationship you didn't get while protecting yourself from the relationship you do have. You can love her as the person who gave you life while also acknowledging that she was not safe. Both things can be true, and the fact that they contradict each other doesn't make you confused or broken. It makes you human. There's a phrase that gets used a lot in recovery circles. She did the best she could with what she had. And maybe that's true. But here's what's also true. Her best wasn't enough. Her best harmed you. Her best didn't keep you safe. And you get to acknowledge that. You get to grieve that. You get to decide that you don't want to participate in more of it. People will tell you that you should forgive her. That forgiveness is for you, not for her. That holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting her to die. And maybe there's something to that. But forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. Forgiveness is not the same as access. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to maintain contact. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to pretend. You can forgive her and still keep her at a distance. You can forgive her and still protect yourself. Forgiveness is between you and you, not between you and her. And if you can't forgive her yet, that's okay too. Forgiveness is not a requirement for healing. Your anger might be protective. Your anger might be accurate. You might need to sit with your anger for a while longer, and that's allowed. The performance is optional. You don't have to be grateful. You don't have to be joyful. You don't have to participate in the family image machine. You don't have to protect her reputation at the expense of your truth. You don't have to make her look good in public. You don't have to smile for the photo. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to lie. What you have to do is survive. What you have to do is protect yourself. What you have to do is choose yourself. And I know that sounds simple until it's time to actually do it. Until the text comes in. Until you're expected. Until someone says, "It's just one day. Can't you do this for her?" Until the guilt arrives and settles into your chest and makes it hard to breathe. Until the dread is so strong that you feel physically sick. But you can do it. You can feel the guilt and not comply. You can feel the obligation and make a different choice. You can feel the pressure and decide not to perform. You can feel the dread and still protect yourself. You're not being unkind. You're being kind to yourself, which is what you should have been taught to be as a child. You're being realistic about what you can handle. You're being honest about what happened. You're being brave enough to say no to something that's supposed to be sacred and obligatory. You don't have to earn your own safety. You don't have to prove that you deserve to protect yourself. You don't have to make it make sense to anyone else. Your survival is reason enough. Your well-being is reason enough. Your truth is reason enough. This weekend, you don't have to be anyone's daughter. You don't have to be anyone's symbol of family loyalty. You don't have to be anyone's image management project. You can just be yourself. And yourself is allowed to have boundaries. Yourself is allowed to protect. Yourself is allowed to grieve. Yourself is allowed to say no. Mother's Day will come and go. And when it does, you'll still be here. You'll still be standing. You'll still be surviving. And that's not just okay. That's everything.